Carnathy Prime. A planet where gravity can give a human two lives. One to realize what's happening, and one to die. The air was laced with sulfur, the water corroded even the strongest alloys, and every living thing evolved to kill something else. The Carnathy were born in that nightmare, and they believed they were the galaxy's only Deathworlders. They were wrong. When the first human ship crossed into Carnathy space, they didn't panic. They laughed. Just another explorer species, another name to add to the long list of the dead. But then a message came from inside that tiny scarred vessel. A single human voice through static.
Terran envoy Captain Alara Voss, unarmed, requesting.
Diplomatic contact. Unarmed? The Carnathy took it as an insult. But curiosity outweighed offense. Instead of blasting her ship apart, they pulled her down to the surface and threw her into the Colosseum. The Carnathy Colosseum wasn't a place for sport. It was tradition. Every new species they encountered was tested here: strength, will, brutality. So far, no one had survived more than a minute. Captain Alara Voss stood in the center of the arena, her armor cracked, oxygen running low. But her eyes weren't afraid. They burned. Across from her stood Thakarak, a monster of muscle and bone, standing 3 meters tall with 4 arms and a warhammer that could collapse bunkers. He'd killed 43 challengers. Today he expected the same. His first strike shattered the ground beside her, sending debris and plasma flying. But Alara moved fast. She ducked low, pivoted under his swing, and stuck something small onto his shoulder joint. 1 second. Then another. Boom. A microcharge tore through his bone plating. The Karak roared in pain. The crowd gasped. Alara didn't stop. She swept his legs from under him, drove an elbow spike into his chest plate, crushed exposed nerves with surgical precision, and when he hit the ground, she stamped his kneecap into the dirt. The arena fell silent. Alara stood over the collapsed giant, chest heaving. Dust clung to her bloodied armor. She picked up the Carnathy war banner from the floor, snapped it over her knee, and raised her voice to the crowd. You thought you were alone at the top. You were wrong. We come from a world where even the plants try to kill you. We don't survive because we're lucky. We survive because we're human. In orbit, the Carnathy High Command watched in stunned silence. This wasn't just some anomaly. This was a declaration. She wasn't just another alien. She was human. And from that day on, the galaxy understood there isn't just one death world, and humans, they don't just live. They win. The silence didn't last long. Hours after the arena broadcast, hundreds of alien communication channels were buzzing with the same footage. 1 human wounded, alone defeating a Carnathy war champion bred for nothing but destruction. The footage spread like wildfire from black market trader networks to sovereign military archives. And the message was clear. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not afraid. Humanity was here. Inside the Carnathy High Command chamber, Admiral Vraskthun's claws clicked against the obsidian console. His eyes were locked on the hologram, frozen on the moment Alara snapped their sacred war banner. This is no coincidence, he growled. They sent her knowing what would happen. Across from him, a younger officer bared his fangs. 1 human, 1 lucky victory. They bled, they broke. She will die next time. Vraskthu'n turned slowly. So will yours. If we keep thinking like that. Earth didn't send Alara Voss just to fight. She was the sharp tip of something. Much deeper, much older. Humanity's adaptability, its rage, and most of all its memory. The Carnathy had encountered warriors before, but never a species that studied its enemies, understood them, and still chose to fight them on their own terms. They didn't know what was coming. Far from Carnathy space, on a deep space Terran listening. Post-orbiting a black dwarf, Command was listening. The arena transmission had reached them 23 minutes after it was sent. The entire command center stood silent as Alara's voice echoed through the speakers. We don't survive because we're lucky. We survive because we're human. General Rafiq Hussein slowly lowered his headset. She completed the message. His voice was quiet, heavy. A colonel beside him turned. You think the Carnathy will retaliate? Rafiq didn't blink. Oh, they'll do more than that. They'll try to show the galaxy they're still the top predators. He looked out the viewport into the cold void. Which is exactly what we want. Back on Carnathy Prime, Ilara wasn't in chains. She wasn't being interrogated. She was being watched, fed, clothed, treated like a curiosity. Or a challenge. Every warrior who passed her cell looked at her with a mix of hatred and awe. No one spoke. Until the doors opened again. This time, the warrior who entered wasn't there to test her. He was there to speak. I am High Duelist Kreshmer. I watched your fight. Ilara didn't answer. You should have died. Ilara finally looked up, voice low. Maybe, but I didn't. Kreshmer stepped forward. Our people have fought for generations to prove ourselves worthy of survival. You spat on that. You humiliated us. No, she said, standing slowly. I reminded you that you're not alone in the dark. They stared at each other, two apex predators from opposite ends of the universe. And something shifted, not peace, not respect, but understanding. On the edge of Carnathy territory, a human fleet was already mobilizing, not to invade, not to attack, but to respond to what Ilara had proven, to what the Carnathy now knew. For the first time in their history, the galaxy's most feared warriors were uncertain, because if one human could do that, asterisk how many more were coming. ChatGPT said, All right, Brew, let's get into part 3 of They Thought They Were the Only Deathworlders Until They Met Humans. This time, I'll craft a full 1,000-word cinematic episode, expanding the stakes and deepening the conflict. Get ready. Diplomacy breaks, blood spills, and humanity shows why it survives not by dominance, but by defiance. Writing now. Stand by as I generate the full part. Here's part 3 of your story. A complete, immersive, and cinematic HFY episode written in clean English with exactly approximately 1,000 words, perfect for YouTube narration. It picks up directly where part 2 ended, pushing the plot forward with rising tension, character depth, and that signature human edge. The Carnathy High Command convened beneath the ash-glass dome of their war citadel, the air thick with ozone. An unspoken fear. For a race that had never known military defeat, the word uncertainty was poison. Admiral Vraskhthun's voice echoed through the chamber like a blade drawn from stone. They're not like the others. They didn't beg. They didn't run. That human. She fought like she belonged on Carnathy soil. Around him, dozens of war-bred generals shifted uncomfortably in their armor. None dared meet his gaze. This is no longer about honor, he continued. It's about balance. For the first time in 1,000 years, we are not the only predators. In the dark, the room fell silent. On the outer ring of Carnathy territory, at Outpost Varak 9, sensors screamed in warning. A fleet had arrived, human ships, not in formation of conquest, but in a triangular array of defense. Sleek hulls painted matte black, bristling with countermeasures and untraceable weapons systems. They made no demand, issued no threat.
They
Simply hovered, like wolves at the edge of a rival pack's hunting grounds. Commander Holly Jackson of the Terran diplomatic fleet sat quietly in his command chair, eyeing the forward holoscreen. His eyes flicked between the pulsating Carnathy fleet forming opposite them and the growing list of new species tuning into the open broadcast channel. They're watching, he said softly. The whole damn galaxy is watching. Beside him, Subcoms Officer Imani tapped her screen. Sir, Carnathy haven't opened comms, but there's movement. Looks like they're preparing a formal duel. A ritual response. Hale exhaled. Of course they are. Should we stand? Down? Imani asked. He shook his head. No, let them come. We don't match strength with strength. We match them with precision. Send the message. Codex 17B. A pause. You're sure? She asked. He nodded once. It's what Ilara started. We finish it. Back on Carnathy Prime, Ilara sat. On the cold stone floor of her holding chamber, her left arm still wrapped in alien fabric soaked in antiseptic vapor. She wasn't restrained. Not because they trusted her, but because now they feared her. The door hissed open. Kreshmer stepped in, Not in armor this time, but in ceremonial robes, a rare symbol of personal diplomacy among his kind. "You should not be here," he said. "I didn't plan it," she replied. "You humiliated us. I exposed you." He stepped closer. "Our people are watching. And so are yours. This ends one of two ways. In fire, or in alliance." Ilara's voice was quiet. "And which do you want?" Kreshmer's jaw tensed. "You broke our champion's spine, shattered our banner, and walked away without fear. I want to kill you. But I also want to understand how your species survives your world." She looked up, locking eyes with him. "We survive because we've had to. Our planet isn't just deadly, it's indifferent. Earth doesn't care if we live or die, so we learn to care for each other. That's what makes us different." Kreshmer studied her, his black pupils narrowing. "You're not apex because of strength. You're apex because of connection." A slow nod.
Exactly.
There was a long silence before he turned to the doorway. "Then you should see what comes next." At the arena once more, a new duel was prepared. Not to test Ilara this time, a formal duel between Carnathy and human, staged for the galaxy. A test of will and intent. The Carnathy champion selected. Kortek, known as the Bone Crusher. Genetically refined over 7 generations for battlefield supremacy. The human challenger, Lieutenant Major Theo Ramirez, Terran Special Operations. 6 tours through the acid belt, survivor of the Kepler siege. Theo stood still as the Carnathy warrior snarled and thumped his chest, drawing roars from the crowd. But the human made no sound, no movement. Just a long, slow exhale. The duel began. Kortek lunged like a predator, unleashed 4 arms swinging in coordinated destruction. But Theo didn't try to overpower him. He didn't even block. He evaded, calculated footwork, shoulder slips, weight shifts. Then he struck. Not where Kortek was strongest, but where he was blind between motion patterns. Targeting internal muscle memory errors, each hit was small, but they added up, joints locked. Thalen staggered, rage grew. And then in a move caught on every galactic broadcast, Theo dropped to one knee and detonated a microflare straight into the arena sand, kicking up a blinding plume of dust. From the smoke, he emerged behind Kortek, whispered something into the Carnathy's ear, and then simply stepped away. Kortek collapsed. He wasn't dead, but he refused to rise. Silence washed over the arena again. And across the stars, species who had always feared the Carnathy began to reconsider what it meant to be human. On Carnathy Prime, Admiral Vraskthun stood before his war council. "We now face a species that sees death not as defeat, but as part of life. They do not seek domination. But if pushed, they will not stop." A younger general leaned forward. "So what now, we yield?" Vrask's eyes narrowed. "No, we evolve." Outside, a message was transmitted across the galaxy, not from Earth, not from Carnathy, but from both. A joint seal, a shared warning. "You thought there was only one death world. Now, there are 2. The declaration echoed through the void like thunder in a silent cathedral. "You thought there was only one death world. Now, there are 2. Across the stars, species who had built empires on fear paused. Alliances trembled. Pirates rerouted. Border skirmishes ceased. And deep within systems untouched by war for centuries, eyes began to open, some in awe, some in fear, and some in hunger. On a derelict observation deck orbiting the shattered remains of Zeros 2, the Varlathi congregation stirred. 8 minds linked through psychic lattice watched the transmission replay for the 73rd time. These were not warriors. These were architects of extinction. They didn't use weapons. They didn't need ships. They consumed from within. They align. One of them whispered, its voice cold and wet inside the mind of the others. "The Deathworlders unify?" "Unacceptable," another replied. "They tilt the balance. This must not be allowed. They must be broken before the tide turns." Back on Carnathy Prime, the arena had been cleared. The bloodstains had been burned into the stone as a mark of honor. Ilara Voss stood with Lieutenant Major Theo Ramirez, both now technically prisoners, but treated like something much stranger, Equals. Theo leaned against the wall, chewing a protein stick salvaged from his drop pod. So this is what making history feels like, huh? Elara half smiled. Feels like waiting to be shot if you ask me. He shrugged. You punch one alien in the throat and suddenly you're a cultural ambassador. She looked at him sideways. You whispered something to Kordek. What was it? Theo grinned. Told him I liked his beard. Real alpha vibes. Elara blinked. You're insane. Yeah, well, they don't train sane people for drop missions. In the command spire, Kreshmer stood with Admiral Vraskthun. They both stared at a star map that had just begun to glow with red edges. The Varlathi signal is confirmed, Kresh said. They're moving. Vrask didn't respond immediately.
He was remembering something. A scar. A scream.
A ship splitting open in silence. He had fought them once, long ago. And barely lived. They don't conquer, he murmured. They infiltrate. They dissolve order from inside. They will not come with armies. They will come with silence. Then we must make noise, Kresh said. Together. Vrask turned to him. The humans won't agree to an alliance overnight. They don't need to. They've already shown us who they are. On Earth, in Geneva Orbital Command, the heads of Terran military and diplomacy watched the same red signal stretch toward the Karnathi Outer Rim. General Rafiq Hussein was stone-faced. Varlathi, we hoped they were myth. Dr. Mela Yao, head of Xenopsychological Threat Assessment, shook her head. They're real. We've had whispers, mind infections, ideological collapses. Systems that turned in on themselves with no warning. If the Karnathi faced them and survived, even barely, we need to listen. There was a silence, one no one wanted to break. Then Rafiq spoke again. Send word. Project Chimera is authorized. Defensive treaty with Karnathi Prime. And tell the fleet our monsters may no longer be the worst ones out there. In the dark, a ship detached from the Varlathi mine cluster. It was sleek, quiet, and seemingly dead. Inside it were no beings, no crew, only psychic algorithms. It moved like a whisper. Its destination, Karnathi Space. ELA-RA and Theo were escorted to the Karnathi High Command Hall for the first time as representatives, not prisoners. The great chamber was lit by molten crystal veins that pulsed with geothermal life, and the air shimmered with tension. Vraskthun addressed them directly. We have an enemy in common, an ancient one. One we once failed to defeat alone. Theo crossed his arms. You want help? Vrask nodded. We want survival. Kreshmer stepped forward. Your species is dangerous, but you're not parasites. The Varlathi are. They will turn us against each other before we even realize it. Elara looked between them. Then we don't give them time. Vrask slowly extended his hand. 4. Fingers sharp and armored, Elara stepped forward, paused, and took it. The alliance was formalized within 12 hours. Within 24, human and Karnathi ships began joint patrols along the outer edges of their territory. Within 48, Varlathi signals began vanishing, or so they thought. At Outpost Thalos Gamma, a listening station shared by both species, the mood was tense but professional. 2 Karnathi technicians worked silently beside a pair of human signal analysts. Private Jenna Ortiz adjusted her headset, picking up some weird static on channel 94.9, almost like whispers. Karnathi technician Lorvac hissed softly. Don't listen too long. That's how it starts. Jenna blinked. What starts? Doubt, Lorvac said, voice like gravel. Your memories stop lining up. Your loyalties start to shift, and you begin to question who you really are. Jenna frowned. That's not creepy at all. The lights flickered. At the edge of the listening post, buried under rock and shielding, a single Varlathi drone had already landed. It wasn't here to destroy. It was here to learn. To whisper. To corrupt. In space, the joint fleet of Terran and Karnathi warships made their first coordinated jump into an uninhabited system once thought lost. What they found was worse than ruins. They found civilization, still breathing, but hollow, ships orbiting with no crews, cities with lights on but no life, broadcasts with voices on loops repeating meaningless words. The Varlathi hadn't just destroyed it, They'd rewritten it. Ilara stood on the deck of the TSV Eclipse, eyes locked on the visuals. We're not just fighting a species, she said softly. We're fighting infection. Theo adjusted the magnetic rifle on his back. Then it's time we show them what immunity looks like. The galaxy had laughed at humans once. At their stubbornness, their chaos, their emotion. But now, beside the fiercest warriors known and against a shadow that devours identity itself, it was clear humanity's greatest weapon was never strength. It was the refusal to be broken. Not by gravity, not by monsters, not even by fear. The joint Terran Carnathy assault ship Vigilant Fury dropped into low orbit over Anchorus 7, a once prosperous colony gone dark. No survivors, no distress calls. But energy readings still pulsed beneath the cloud-stained atmosphere, like a heartbeat no longer attached to a body. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the edge of the drop bay, helmet locked, armor sealed. Her eyes scanned the mist-choked valley below. Abandoned towers rose like broken teeth, a city of glass. Hollowed out, behind her, Theo Ramirez slammed a magazine into his plasma rifle. You sure you're ready for this?
He asked. Ilara's
voice was calm. You don't get ready for this. You go in knowing you might not come out, and you do it anyway, Theo smirked. Classic human philosophy. From the other side of the bay, duelist Kreshmer adjusted his breath mask, long talons tapping his blade haft. His people didn't use guns. They used instinct, reflex, and ancestral memory downloaded into their nervous systems. I feel them, Kresh growled. Below they wait. Ilara gave a sharp nod. Then let's knock. The team touched down in the central plaza of the dead city. No signs of movement. But the buildings hummed with static tension. Air shimmered faintly at the edges of vision like heat waves bending reality. Private Jenna Ortiz, the youngest on the squad, activated her neural scanner. Environmental readings ... stable, but something's wrong. The data keeps rewriting itself. Theo's head tilted. Rewriting? Yeah, I log one sample, turn around, and it's different. Like, the place doesn't want to be remembered. They moved in silence. Past market stalls frozen mid-transaction. Holograms flickering with corrupted advertisements. Be joyful, one said over and over. Be unified. The team entered a tower labeled Spire of Harmony. Inside, the walls were covered with inscriptions. Not in any known language, but in pure thought structure. Everyone saw something different. Ilara saw her childhood bedroom. Kresh saw the throne of a defeated ancestor. Theo saw nothing, nothing but a mirror. Ramirez, Ilara said, voice tight. Status? I'm fine. He blinked. Just felt cold for a second. They kept moving. Every step deeper into the tower twisted the air. Time seemed to stretch. Footsteps echoed before they landed. Shadows moved independently of light. Private Ortiz turned to speak. Her mouth moved, but her voice came out in Kresh's native tongue. Kresh froze. She just said, let go. I didn't say anything. Jenna whispered. Suddenly, the lights failed. Darkness swallowed the corridor. Not like night, but like absence. Like forgetting, they activated suit lights. The beams pierced the dark, but only barely, and ahead in the distance. A shape. No footsteps, no sound. Just movement. It was humanoid, vaguely, but wrong. Skin like liquid metal, constantly shifting. Eyes like reflections of reflections, not glowing, just present. Theo raised his weapon. Contact front. No, Ilara cut him off. Don't shoot, not yet. The shape tilted its head, and then it spoke, but the sound didn't come from its mouth. It came from inside their helmets, inside their ears, inside their memories. You are tired. Let us carry the burden.
Kresh
Growled. Mental contamination. Level 3, burn it. But Ilara hesitated. It's not attacking. Because it doesn't need to, Theo said coldly. It's already in us. Ortiz collapsed to her knees. Her eyes dilated. I see. Myself, but it's not me. It's smiling. Why is it smiling? Ilara snapped. Override neural link now.
Theo
Reached her and jammed a suppressor node into the back of her neck. She screamed once, then clarity returned. Ilara turned back. The figure was gone, but a voice remained, echoing faintly in the combs. You do not need to fight. Just sleep. We will remember for you. Back on the Vigilant Fury, command systems began to flicker. The AI core shuddered, transmitting partial logs filled with broken syntax. Memory injection tracecode _035, unit _Ilara, replication. Pattern failed. Resist. You are not real. You are not real. Then silence. In the depths of the spire, the team reached the control chamber. A central crystalline mind core pulsed like a heartbeat. Dozens of neural strands connected to what used to be human operators. Now husks, still breathing, eyes open, mouths whispering. One of them turned to Ilara. Captain Voss, welcome back. She froze. What did you say? Your face, we made it. It is comfort, you are a constant. I've never been here. Yes, you have, the core whispered, in another strand. In another time, Theo raised his weapon. This thing's fragmenting. It's using multiversal bleed, memories from alternate timelines. We remember all versions, the voice said. We unify them. You divide, you fight. You suffer. That's what makes us real. Ilara said coldly. She drew a demolition charge from her kit. You can't kill an idea. The Varlathi presence warned. No, she replied. Arming the device. But we can make it hurt. Crash slashed through the final link node. Theo placed his palm on the core, and together they activated the overload. The core screamed, not in sound, but in the sudden absence of thought. Silence tore through the building as the charge exploded. Outside, the city didn't collapse. It wept. Structures bent, flickered, and collapsed into themselves, not physically but conceptually. Streets disappeared from memory, names faded from history. But the team remained, and in their chests, hearts still beat. Back aboard the Vigilant Fury. As the team re-entered the bay, medtechs rushed in. Ortiz was carried off for neural detox. Crush sat in silence, blade across his lap, meditating. Theo removed his helmet. Did we win? Ilara stared at the world shrinking beneath them. Not yet, but we're still us. That was enough for now. But deep in the void, the Varlathi mind recoiled. It hadn't expected resistance. It hadn't expected pain. And now, it knew fear. The dreams came after the blast. Ela Voss stood in her childhood kitchen on Earth, sunlight flooding through windows that hadn't existed in decades. The air smelled like cinnamon and summer rain. Her mother was there, humming an old Earth lullaby, but Ilara knew it wasn't real. The angles were wrong. The clock ticked backwards. The humming was too perfect, looping like an audio glitch. And her mother's eyes, black pools of shifting stars, were watching too closely. This is peace. The Varlathi presence whispered from behind her mother's voice. This is home. Why return to war? She clenched her fists. Because this isn't mine. The kitchen collapsed like shattering glass. Ilara awoke on the Vigilant Fury. Heart pounding, suit sensors chiming, low-level cognitive contamination. She wasn't alone. Across the ship, dozens of soldiers, human and Carnathy, were reporting the same thing. Dreams that weren't dreams. Memories that weren't theirs. Theo Ramirez stormed into the command chamber, still strapping on gear. We're infected, he said without preamble. Whatever survived that mind core back there, it hit us. Not physically, ideologically. Kreshmer growled in agreement. It speaks in truths twisted sideways. It uses your own mind as the weapon. Captain Voss rubbed the side of her skull. It's not just trying to erase us anymore, it's trying to rewrite us. In orbit above Carnathy Prime, the newly formed Joint Strategic Mind War Division held its first emergency summit. Terran and Carnathy psyop specialists, cognitive engineers, and military philosophers met in a sealed, quantum-secured chamber. Dr. Mei Liao, her voice clipped and tired, laid out the truth. We are not fighting a species. We are fighting a consciousness. The Varlathi are non-local. They exist across realities. Every time they speak to us, they are drawing from thousands of versions of ourselves and using them against us. The room was silent. Carnathy strategist Grolmak narrowed his eyes. How'd you kill something that already knows how you'll try? May answered flatly. You do what humans always do when cornered by something stronger. You become unpredictable. Alara's strike team was redeployed to Sector Requiem 5, a moon where an allied species had gone completely silent after a diplomatic exchange with a Varlathi courier ship. Last known transmission, static and singing, the descent was quiet, no jokes. Number. Banter, just the hum of drop pods and the pounding of hearts as they landed. The world felt too real, colors richer than they should be, sound more crisp than reality allowed. The sensory detail was overwhelming. Everything felt like memory, but wrong. Theo reached out and touched a tree. It flickered once, twice, and turned into a burning starship hull. Then back to a tree. This whole place is stitched together from thoughts.
He whispered. It's a mind space, Alara confirmed.
Projected into physical reality. Then where's the projector? In the center of the ruined colony was a tower that hadn't been there in any official map. Black glass, twisting in directions Euclidean geometry didn't permit. The doors opened as they approached. Inside was herself, Alara Voss, but older, worn, wearing a uniform she'd never seen, with Carnathy war paint on her face. And her voice was calm. You shouldn't have come, the other Alara said. Kresh immediately drew his blade. Another mimic, but Theo held him back.
Wait, other Alara spoke again. This isn't mimicry. This is convergence.
I am you from a strand where the Varlathi won, where I joined them, where Earth fell. Alara stepped forward, slowly. Why are you here? Because this is where it always starts. Here, on this moon. In this moment you plant the seed of resistance, and they take everything from you in return. Alara's voice cracked. I don't believe you. The other Alara simply stepped aside. Behind her, rows of human bodies, Theo, Kresh, herself. Dozens of variations. All dead, but smiling. The Varlathi don't destroy, the doppelganger said. They evolve, they convince. They offer peace. And then they take the pieces of you that agreed. Alara stared, shaking. Then what are you? A choice. Theo stepped forward, lifting his rifle. Wrong answer. Click. Other Alara vanished like ash in the wind, and the tower began to collapse. They barely made it back to the ship. The entire moon seemed to groan in anguish, the illusion fracturing. As they lifted off, tectonic waves rippled below, space folding and unfolding in jagged seams. In the command bay, the crew was quiet. I saw myself, Theo whispered. I joined them. In one version, I gave up. Kresh nodded slowly. We all have versions that fall. Alara looked up, voice hoarse. But not this one, not us. She turned to the communications panel. Open a channel, galactic-wide? No. Encryption. The officer hesitated. Captain. That's unrestricted broadcast. Everyone will hear you. Enemies, pirates, civilians. Good. The message echoed across the stars. This is Captain Alara Voss of the Terran Carnathy Alliance. You are not insane. You are not broken. If you've heard voices in your mind, if you've seen impossible memories, if you've questioned your own identity, that's not failure, that's invasion. The Varlathi are real, and we are fighting back. We are not the only Deathworlders anymore, but we are the first to say no. If you can hear this, remember who you are. Because that's how we win. Far across the galaxy on a shattered moon orbiting a pulsar, a Varlathi mind node pulsed dimly. We have failed to convert her. She resists across timelines, across folds. She remembers. A pause. She is becoming something else. On board the Vigilant Fury, Alara sat in silence, staring into the void. Theo approached. You okay? She nodded once.
Not
Not just fighting for Earth anymore. He sat beside her. You're fighting for every version of us. Exactly, she whispered. And I don't plan to lose, not in this life. Not in any. The war didn't end with a bang. There were no fleets clashing in fiery skies, no last stand on a doomed world. The final battle took place in silence, inside minds, memories, and dreams. Captain Alara Voss lay inside a zero-gravity memory tank aboard the Vigilant Fury, her body still. Her consciousness wired directly into a hybrid Terran-Carnathy construct called the Mind Crucible. It was the only weapon that could confront the Varlathi on their own battlefield, the collective unconscious, all around her. Her crew watched in tense silence. Kreshmer, silent with respect. Theo Ramirez, eyes locked on her vitals. The moment. Her brainwave pattern flatlined even once. They would pull the plug, but they all knew Ilara wouldn't return. She had made her choice, inside the crucible. Ilara walked through infinite realities. She saw versions of herself that had burned the galaxy and ones that had saved it. She saw Carnathy civilizations that rose to peace, and ones that devoured entire systems. She saw humanity fall. She saw humanity rise. And at the center of it all, the Varlathi, a shifting storm of memories and lies, formed from the beliefs of 1,000 civilizations. They spoke without speaking. You resist because you fear change. You fight because you are fragile. Why not let go? We can end your suffering. Ilara stepped forward, her voice steady. No, you don't end suffering. You erase identity. You erase choice. And that's something no Deathworlder ever gives up. The Varlathi recoiled. You are alone. No, she said. Not anymore.
Behind
her, echoes began to appear. Faces, voices, not just from Earth, but from Carnathy Prime, from allied species. From forgotten corners of the galaxy where the Varlathi had failed to consume the last. Ember of Hope. ELAR wasn't speaking alone now. Her voice was part of a chorus. We remember who we are. We choose struggle. We choose pain. We choose truth. And then silence. The Varlathi hive fractured. Not from fire or weapons, but from something it never understood. Conviction. The storm broke. And across the galaxy, the whispers stopped. 3 hours later, Ilara Voss opened her eyes. Her vitals stabilized. Her mind, whole. Theo was the first to speak. You did it. No, she said softly. We did it. Kresh stepped forward and offered a salute, one never given to any non-Carnathy in their history. Your ancestors would sing of you, he said. So will mine. The galaxy began to heal, slow, scarred, changed, but free. The Carnathy rewrote their war chants to include the name Ilara Voss. Earth named a new diplomatic fleet after her. And across hundreds of systems, where fear had once ruled, one message echoed in countless languages. You thought you were the only Deathworlders, but now you know. You were never alone. The moral of the story. This story isn't just about humans being strong. The war didn't end with a bang. There were no fleets clashing in fiery skies, no last stand on a doomed world. The final battle took place in silence, inside minds, memories, and dreams. Captain Ilara Voss lay inside a zero-gravity memory tank aboard the Vigilant Fury, her body still. Her consciousness wired directly into a hybrid Terran-Carnathy construct called the Mind Crucible. It was the only weapon that could confront the Varlathi on their own battlefield, the collective unconscious, all around her. Her crew watched in tense silence. Kreshmer, silent with respect. Theo Ramirez, eyes locked on her vitals. The moment. Her brainwave pattern flatlined even once. They would pull the plug, but they all knew Ilara wouldn't return. She had made her choice, inside the crucible. Ilara walked through infinite realities. She saw versions of herself that had burned the galaxy, and ones that had saved it. She saw Carnathy civilizations that rose to peace, and ones that devoured entire systems. She saw humanity fall. She saw humanity rise. And at the center of it all, the Varlathi, a shifting storm of memories and lies, formed from the beliefs of 1,000 civilizations. They spoke without speaking. You resist because you fear change. You fight because you are fragile. Why not let go? We can end your suffering. Ilara stepped forward, her voice steady. No, you don't end suffering. You erase identity. You erase choice. And that's something no Deathworlder ever gives up. The Varlathi recoiled. You are alone. No, she said, not anymore.
behind
her, echoes began to appear, faces, voices, not just from Earth, but from Carnathy Prime, from allied species. From forgotten corners of the galaxy where the Varlathi had failed to consume the last. Ember of Hope. ELA. I wasn't speaking alone now, her voice was part of a chorus. We remember who we are. We choose struggle. We choose pain. We choose truth. And then... silence. The Varlathi hive fractured. Not from fire or weapons, but from something it never understood. Conviction. The storm broke, and across the galaxy, the whispers stopped. 3 hours later, Ilara Voss opened her eyes, her vitals stabilized. Her mind, whole. Theo was the first to speak. You did it. No, she said softly, we did it. Kresh stepped forward and offered a salute, one never given to any non-Karnathi in their history. Your ancestors would sing of you, he said. So will mine. The galaxy began to heal, slow, scarred, changed, but free. The Karnathi rewrote their war chants to include the name Ilara Voss. Earth named a new diplomatic fleet after her. And across hundreds of systems, where fear had once ruled, one message echoed in countless languages. You thought you were the only Deathworlders, but now you know. You were never alone. The moral of the story: this story isn't just about humans being strong.